gonna start like every segment from now on with like 15 seconds of drinking coffee just so I don't have to curse, you know, for the YouTube guidelines. Every video from now on is just gonna be like 15 seconds of, you know, because otherwise it just slips out. I can't help myself. Okay. Let's talk about long COVID, everybody. Long COVID. I know. If you're 83% of Americans who become anti-vaxxers, you're rolling your eyes. Again? People are talking about COVID again? It's almost like, you know, can you believe that someone's talking about the rain? You know, it's almost like it keeps raining. Like, I don't like the rain. I don't want to hear about it. And yet, people keep talking about it. It's interesting. It's an interesting concept. But anyway, let's talk about long COVID. Long COVID could be longer and more severe than we thought, study finds. Lingering symptoms of the disease affects 10% of patients, researchers say. Data shows that long COVID symptoms can last more than a year. It is estimated that tens of millions of people worldwide are suffering with symptoms that have come to be known as long COVID. I have a question. Because some people really don't understand how long COVID works. So here's a thought experiment for you that if you need help with that, okay? And I have a pen as a prop now so that I can use it, you know, and I go like this and I seem like I'm more intelligent because I got a pen, you know, like, I don't know, you know that? And then I click it. Anyway, imagine you're in an apartment building and someone on the 3rd floor, you live on the 5th floor, right? Someone on the 3rd floor's stove explodes and there's a fire. And it's, you know, 3 a.m. They were trying to make some nachos. They've, you know, something happened. Boom. The whole apartment building's on fire. Now, let's say you escape the fire. You don't die. You escape the fire. But you got some 3rd-degree burns all over your body. Now, I have a question for you. You escaped the fire, right? You're alive, right? Does that mean that you're perfectly normal? If you're an American, you would say yes. The only thing is either you're dead or you're alive. Because that's how Americans have talked about COVID. Why? Because Americans are fucking stupid, okay? And people in the world in general. It's not just Americans. There's a lot of dumb motherfuckers out there. But again, you survived the apartment fire. You're going to have to be dealing with those 3rd-degree burns for a long time, maybe even the rest of your life, right? So now imagine that instead of a fire, it is a virus that tears you apart from the inside. Now again, you're not dead. You are still technically alive, but you're still dealing with the situation. And one of the things about COVID, which I have not gotten COVID. I refuse. When this pandemic started, I made the decision. I refuse. I'm going to do whatever I need to do. Stay home as long as I need to. I'm not getting COVID. I refuse. I said no. And I know that I am at this point, it's like a what? Like a 5% of Americans have never gotten it or some shit. It's crazy. Anyway. Yes, look at me. Anyway, I don't know what the actual number is. But again, when you get COVID, the idea that you can recover from COVID is kind of made up. I mean, I'm not saying that you're going to be, if you get COVID, you have COVID for the rest of your life. But what I'm saying is the idea that when the first like 3 or 4 days of symptoms pass, that means you're recovered doesn't make any sense, right? Because you can have COVID and be asymptomatic and then develop long COVID. I'm going to read this article in a second here. I just got to give everyone a primer because this is a very interesting subject matter that a lot of people are dumb on. Right. So, you ever cut yourself or something, or like you get like a blister and then your blister pops and then you get a scab, right? And then the scab, it looks like it's ready to come off, But then, like, you rip the scab off, you know, does anyone ever play with scabs? I did it once, and now I don't do it anymore. I did it as a kid, and it freaked me out because I started bleeding. But anyway, so you play with the scab. You think the scab is pretty much, you think you can just rip it off. You're pretty much good to go. But wait, you rip it off, there's a little bit of blood in the middle. It wasn't fully healed. Well, that's what happens when you go back to work, when your symptoms have resolved from COVID, is that your body is actually not done fighting COVID. It's maybe done with the bulk of fighting COVID. It's maybe done with the hardest part of fighting COVID, but it's not done. And so when you go to work too early, you risk damaging your body, right? But again, we live in America. If you don't go to work, you get fired. And if you don't have a job, then you lose your house. And if you don't have a house, then you have to live on the street. If you live on the street, you're probably going to catch COVID again and then die. So gotta go to work, right, America? Anyway, let's get to this article. According to a new study by a group of researchers from the United States, the impact of long COVID or post-COVID conditions may be more severe than previously thought. In a review of 200 studies published in the peer-reviewed journal Nature Reviews Microbiology on January 13, so this is like a meta-level review of other reviews, of other studies. The team called for more research and care for patients with long COVID symptoms, adding that there were not enough existing research to properly understand or treat the condition. The review was carried out by 2 researchers from the Patient-Led Research Collaborative and 2 other researchers from the Scripps Research Translation in La Jolla, California. They estimated that 10% of the 651 million documented COVID-19 cases around the world, at least 65 million people have long COVID. They quoted other studies suggesting that 10 to 30% of non-hospitalized coronavirus cases would develop long COVID. The percentage increased from 50 to 70% for hospitalized cases. Now, I don't know about you, but that's fucking scary. I don't know about you. Hey, maybe I'm the weird one. But a 10 to 30% chance. Now, again, this is a review of hundreds of studies. So that's why it's, you know, that's the range. Some studies say 15%. Some studies say 25%, right? So that's why it says 10 to 30. But like, at 10% is a little too high, you know, for me to risk that. 30%, I don't know. But also, how do you even know if you're going to end up in the hospital? You might be thinking, oh, I'm healthy. I probably won't be hospitalized. That puts your risk low. But what if you end up getting hospitalized? What if you have an underlying condition you didn't know about? Did you know that 95% of Americans don't eat fruits or vegetables? Now, what I mean by that is 95% of Americans don't eat fiber. What is fiber? Fruits and vegetables, all right? Nuts, other stuff like that. They don't eat fiber. And what that has resulted in is 93%, there is a 2% delta, 93, margin of error, 93% of Americans have chronic metabolic dysfunction. They are basically just sick at a low level all the time. And when you have metabolic dysfunction, that can lead to inflammation. Inflammation can trigger and weaken your immune system. So when 93% of the country has a low level amount of inflammation just happening a lot, and your immune system is weakened, and there's a pandemic, no good. No good. But has Anthony Fauci been talking about people eating fruits and vegetables to protect against COVID? I'm just wondering. And of course, you need multiple layers. You don't want to get COVID in the first place. Wear a mask. Right? If you do get COVID, you want your body to be ready for it. That's called get a vaccine. But that doesn't mean you stop there. Right? You want your body not only to know how to fight the virus from the vaccine, but you want your body to stockpile arms. You want your body to be working out every day, to be tip-top soldiers. Because if COVID comes in, they want to be tip-top soldiers. They want to have like fucking think about like Arnold Schwarzenegger in like Predator or some shit. Like he's like, oh. But then also you want them to have the blueprints for how to fight the virus. So masking, don't get the fucking virus in the first place. Vaccine, tell your fucking goddamn immune system how to beat the guys. And then food, treating your body well via nutrition and diet is training your body so that when the virus comes in, if it does, if you somehow get unlucky enough while masking that you somehow get the virus anyway, which can happen, though it's severely less likely, right, that you are as protected as possible. But 93% of Americans are not like that, and so it's resulted in a situation where there's a lot of people that are just fucked up. So just think about that. Let's keep going. However, the study did not clarify the definition of long COVID, and some of the findings contradicted those of previous studies. Now, again, this is the problem with long COVID, is it's not really a medical term, right? It's kind of like a cluster of a bunch of different symptoms. And, a lot of people, it's like imagine like Venn diagrams, right? But you have like a bunch of different Venn diagrams. So it's not just the 2 circles. It's not just the 3 circles. It's like, it's like 9 circles, right? And then so whatever in the middle portions are, that would be long COVID. But, some people experience. So that's why defining long COVID is difficult. It's also just, again, to put it bluntly, we still really don't know what the effects of long-term exposure to this kind of virus is on the human body. We just don't know. And that's not something you can find out in 4 years or 5 years. It might take until 2030 before we truly understand how COVID affected our bodies. It might be 2040. Who knows? I say this. Don't get it in the first place. That's what I say. Drinking some water here. Gotta lubricate the esophageal region. According to the World Health Organization, PCC, post-COVID, whatever. What is it? Like post-COVID something. Conditions. Yeah, I think that's probably a better name, but it's probably not going to stick. Post-COVID conditions or long COVID is defined as the continuation or development of symptoms that are present 3 months after a SARS-CoV-2 infection, with symptoms lasting for at least 2 months that cannot be explained through any other diagnosis. Common symptoms include fatigue, shortness of breath, cognitive dysfunction, which may fluctuate or relapse over time. In an earlier study, now again, I also want to look at diet on this one again, because all of these articles, I'm a little bit of a wellness person now, but not one of those freaky ones, but still, we got to talk about diet here. What can fluctuate in 3 months? You get COVID. You don't want to cook anymore. Let's say you were someone that takes their diet seriously, but you just don't have the energy to cook. You might be more likely to get less quality food, more likely to get delivery, more likely to get fast food, frozen meals. Then your body, not only are you getting destroyed from fighting COVID, but you're not getting proper nutrients in your system because you can't actually cook because you're disabled now and no one can cook for you in the house that you live in, or maybe you live by yourself, whatever. And so months down the line, maybe you slightly recover from COVID and you could start taking your own meals in your hands again, but maybe something else happens. You skip a couple weeks of good nutrition, and then all of a sudden, COVID, you're starting, got some joint pain. Again, all of this stuff is connected. When we live in a country that's as chronically sick as America, it's all an important conversation. We cannot talk about COVID without talking about the American diet, the Western diet. Those are inextricably linked. Like talking about climate change and water quality. You can't talk about one without talking about the other. When 93% of the country is sick all the time, pretty much with a low level of sickness, and then a plague comes in, and it's weird that nobody, not a single body, maybe a couple bodies, I don't know, But in mainstream press, they don't talk about that. Do you see that? Does Tony Fauci talk about using food as a preventative? You see a couple of anti-vaxxers talk about it, but again, they're anti-vaxxers, so they don't really understand what the fuck's going on. Or they think food alone can stop a problem like this instead of masking or vaccinating. I mean, again, dumb motherfuckers, right? So there's just a gigantic vacuum in this country. No one knows about any of this shit. And most of the sources for this stuff are cringy weirdos. So, this is why I say, America, it's over. The dominoes are falling. 2019, you could debate, that we're still setting up the dominoes. But once COVID has come, the dominoes have started falling, and they're just going to keep falling, right? It's like the house of cards. Once the house of cards starts to collapse, you can't save it. It's just not going to, it's one of those things that's very precarious. Once it happens, it's like Jenga, right? When you pull that last block and it starts to fall, there's no amount of you can do to bring the tower back up. America poisoned its entire population for decades, since the 1960s and 70s with the advent of processed food, frozen food, fast food, right? America has been poisoning its constituents for 50, 60 years. And then a plague comes. It's over. It's already over, right? There's no one in the media that's talking about the actual ways to help things. It's all scapegoats. It's all putting all of your hope in one different thing, right? Everyone's clinging to their own conspiracy theories. You see anti-vaxxers taking horse dewormers, right? You see people washing their fruits with fucking bleach, It's over. It's over. This is what I say, and I've already said this, is that America overplayed its hand. The combination of the massive cuts to education in this country, right? No one, if you go to school, you are trained to be dumb. You are not learning in school. You are not opening your mind in school. You are shutting your mind. You're just learning a very rigid definition of the world, and you are closing off your imagination and your ability to learn any more things. That's what schools are. They have been making people dumber for decades. They've been making people fucking stupid forever, as long as I've been alive. 26 for context. They've been making people dumb for a long time. So you combine people are dumb, the food that is fed to us in this country, most of the food is poisoned. Sugar is poison. It poisons your body. There is no need to consume sugar. It's poison. It's a poison. Alcohol is also a poison. That doesn't mean you can't have it every once in a while. But if you're drinking half a handle of vodka every day, you got a problem. The average American in the United States of America consumes 70 grams of sugar every day. 70 grams of sugar every day. The average American consumes 70 grams of sugar. That's poison. They're alcoholics. But if you ask the average American, are you an alcoholic? They're going to say no, because they don't drink alcohol that much, but they eat sugar that much. What is alcohol, by the way? It's sugar. I don't know if you knew that. Alcohol is sugar that's fermented by certain kinds of other species like, bacteria, yeast, whatever, right? So you have a country that is essentially, we're all alcoholics and we're pouring sugar down our gullets every day. We're chronically sick and poisoned. We're also extremely fucking stupid. Okay? We're also really fucking stupid as a country because of our slashes to education. And then here comes the plague. It's already over. I'm telling you all right now. It's over. Don't try stopping the ship. We are rearranging the chairs on the Titanic. Okay? The Great Reset, whatever conspiracy you want to believe, it's already happening and you can't stop it. All right? There's going to be a lot of people dying, and we're not going to know why until it's too late. The American life expectancy dropped by like 4 years, which is already historically, globally, really low already. America had a very low life expectancy compared to the rest of the world, and now it's dropping at an accelerated rate. So again, I try to historicize and put all the context together when I talk about long COVID, because we don't really know what the fuck's going on here. And it's going to be a while until we do. So why are we going out and getting COVID every other fucking day? Why are people still working in person? Why are people doing stupid social events like concerts? Why are people doing parties? Why are people going to schools that are open with no ventilation? Why are people having weddings? Why are people doing family reunions? Why are people having big funerals? Because they're all fucking stupid. Americans are dumb motherfuckers. They were born and bred and trained to be dumb motherfuckers. And I believe that America overplayed its hand. Now, I know the capitalist class, the billionaires, they are hoping that automation, robotics, and AI will replace the workforce. You are being replaced. I'm sorry. You're getting replaced. Your job, whatever it is expendable, and so are you. Not just is your job expendable, but so are you. The capitalist class is committing a genocide. Why do you think Joe Biden said the pandemic was over right before the worst winter that we've ever had? Why? Because he doesn't give a fuck about you. And neither does Trump. Neither does any politician. They got bought and paid off a long time ago. So once again, it's already game, set, match for America. It's over. We are all rearranging the chairs on the Titanic, and everyone is lost. Everyone is lost. You know, you ever play Silent Hill 2? Anyone ever play it? I got it right here. I'm going to show it on stream because I love this game. You ever play this game, Silent Hill 2? It's a great game. Okay. So in this game, there's a portion of the game where you're on a lake and you're in a boat. And there's there's mist everywhere. There's fog everywhere. It's a great game. You got to play it, right? And you don't know where you go. You're trapped. You're on this boat in a fog world. You can't see in front of you. And you don't know where the fuck you're going. Well, that's us. Everyone in this country is lost in a boat in a fog world. And they don't know what direction is which. They're stuck. And no one's going to save them. I can't save them. I'm not qualified to do anything. I'm just some stupid bitch that reads all day, right? I'm in no position to save people. I can hope that someone might listen to a video I make, might read something I've written, and then go maybe I'm going to look into this, and maybe they can, start themselves on a path or whatever. That's great. But let's be honest. As a society, as a general culture, it's already over. I want to read more of this. About 43% of patients who were admitted to intensive care units developed long COVID, compared to 27.5% of those who were admitted to general hospital wards and 5.7% of those who were not hospitalized. I also want to say this much. How many people have a form of long COVID in America but aren't going to the doctor to talk about it? Why? Because it costs money. Let's say someone has COVID 4 months later. They just have some short-term memory issues. Fuck. Ugh. But it's not like they're bleeding. It's not like they're going to die, right? So they don't want to go to the doctor. They never tell anyone that they don't even really know it's long COVID. How many? So my opinion is that long COVID cases are undercounted, especially in America, when it costs money to even get an examination. Not to mention, the examination isn't even going to help you treat the issue. It's just to identify what the issue might be. That costs a fuckload of money. Most Americans don't have that money, and most Americans don't have health insurance that would pay for that. The study was published in the Journal of American Medicine Association in October 22. This one. Theo Vos, an epidemiologist at the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation in the University of Washington in Seattle, also is a corresponding author of the JAMA study, said compared with his findings, the proportion of people with long COVID quoted in the new article was considerably higher, which may partly be a definitional issue since his team concentrated on the main symptom clusters. Quote, more likely is that most of the studies quoted just report symptoms after COVID infection and do not take into account that many of the long COVID-related symptoms are commonly reported even without COVID infection. People can get COVID, test for it at home, not go to the doctor, not get hospitalized. They might not tell their doctor when they go in 8 months later that they had COVID, right? It's hard to know. We're a population that was already chronically ill, chronically sick, and we're just getting sicker and sicker and sicker and sicker. And we also can't go get help without paying thousands of dollars for it. He added that with the Omicron variant, the risk of long COVID was between half and a third of what it was compared to earlier variants, and recent vaccinations helped to lower the risk. Now again, recent vaccinations. 17% of America got the recent vaccine, which means 83% of America refused it. Why? Because the anti-vaxxers won. The anti-vaxxers are 83% of Americans. Think of another issue, by the way. Just think of another issue, any political issue, where 83% of Americans are in agreement. I mean, legal weed is only getting like 70%. But free healthcare? Free. It's free. Free healthcare. Only 17% of the country, when push came to shove, bothered to sign up for free healthcare. Think about that. 83% of the country was like, free healthcare? I'm going to go watch some Netflix, bro. One study finds that 85% of patients who had symptoms 2 months after the initial infection reported symptoms 1 year after the symptom onset. So if you're still having symptoms 2 months after getting COVID, buckle up, in other words, because there's an 85% chance you're still going to be in that situation a year later. So if you're thinking, I had COVID 2 months ago and I've been feeling weird ever since, start eating fruits and vegetables, motherfucker. Start taking care of your diet, motherfucker. Start taking 10-hour sleep sessions, motherfucker. Because if you don't, you're not going to have a good time. It added that though future prognoses were uncertain, conditions known as ME or CFS, a multisystem neuroimmune illness, and dysautonomia, a disorder of the autonomic nervous system, were generally lifelong. So again, we don't know about COVID in particular, but there's a lot of crossover with long COVID and other diseases that just last forever. Cause for concern. Cause for concern if you don't... If you want to hear my opinion, I'm a little concerned about that. Voss said that the recovery time of long COVID quoted in the new study was contrary to his analysis, which indicated that by 1 year, 85% of people would have recovered. Did I read that incorrectly? Okay, so that's just, I gotta look into that one. 85% of people have recovered, unless this is just referencing different things. I'm not sure, but this is written poorly here. But okay. This sort of selective reporting on long COVID with exaggerated estimates does not help, he said. It is making quite a lot of policymakers skeptical, while long COVID is a serious condition affecting many individuals who are in need of supportive care as long as there are no clear treatments. I'm not sure what this guy's angle is. To ensure an adequate response to the long COVID crisis, the author said more comprehensive research, public communication campaigns, and policies and funding support were needed. We need research that builds on existing knowledge and is inclusive of patient experience, training, and education for the healthcare and research workforce. Now, in a country that actually gave a fuck, by the way, we would first of all, we would have already had a universal college scenario, but, whatever. But let's assume we still want to live in the hyper-capitalism world that we live in, the dystopia, and we actually wanted to treat COVID as a serious concern. What we would do is fund free grants for medical school. How long does medical school take? Like a decade. Right? Like, a long time. You got to go to medical school before you become like a full-fledged doctor. So we should have started that shit 4 years ago. 4 years ago, we should have started that shit. We haven't even started it. And also, less people are going to medical school. Yikes. And also, a lot of people are leaving the healthcare industry because it's too traumatizing. Not good. And also, again, we don't have any money. The United States is putting up almost no money into this. A lot of this information, a lot of these studies are done outside the United States in countries that do have some form of universal healthcare system. That's where a lot of our information is coming. But again, we don't really know. We don't really know. And that's the thing about it. When I don't know something, you know what I do? I wait until I have the information and then make my decision on whether or not I'm going to proceed. So I don't know how COVID affects the body. Therefore, I'm not going to get COVID if I can help it. Now, I know I'm one of the last people on the planet that hasn't gotten COVID by now. Again, I spend 99% of my time at home. I've got that privilege. I accept that privilege. I acknowledge that privilege. And I'm going to use that privilege. I'm sorry. I don't know why. I don't know how. But I'm able to make just enough money to get by without leaving the house. And that's a win for me. And I value my health more than I value money. I could have another job. I could have a couple other jobs and leave the house and make a lot of money. I could. And I could spend that money on toys and video games. I could. I could spend that money going to restaurants and eating out. Hitting up the club. But I'm not, because I value my health more than I value that stupid ass garbage. I don't care about money. Money to me is a binary. Do I have enough money to live? If so, I'm done. I don't give a shit. That's my opinion on money. I wish more people had that opinion. But I have chosen that I value my health more than I value money. I could make a lot more money. I could get another job. I could start grifting on my YouTube show. I could just beg my current audience for more money. I don't need to at the moment. So, why? Because I don't care. I don't care about that shit. I care about my health. That's it. That's all I care about. That's the only thing that matters. People really need to reassess their lives. If you care about money more than you care about your health, I don't know, man. So anyway, I just wanted to do a long COVID segment. It's very inconclusive is the point of this segment, is we don't really know. We don't really know. That's the whole point of this statement. That's the whole point of this segment. That's the whole point of this study. That's the whole point of this meta review, is that we don't really know what's going on. All we do know is that it doesn't look good. That we do know. It does not look good. But it'll probably be a while before we have more actual definitive information on this stuff. It might even be, it might be by 2030 we know what's going on with long COVID. So, there you go. I hope you enjoyed my 90-year-long COVID segment. How long was that one? I don't even know. But yeah, I don't know, man. Just be careful, everybody. We live in a shithole country with a shithole culture, with shithole people. It's a zombie apocalypse. Just imagine it. This is a little bit of a pseudo-speciation trick for y'all. Just imagine we're living in a zombie apocalypse. A They Live scenario. They're all aliens. They're all zombies. They're all freaks. And we just got to navigate that reality. Most Americans, they just don't give a fuck. They just don't give a fuck. Because they were born, bred, and raised and trained by this country to not give a fuck. And so can you really be surprised when they're still in the Matrix, if you will? They're still eating Burger King? Can you be surprised? They're still eating Wendy's? They're still going to the frozen food aisle? Can you really be surprised? I mean, that's been taught to them their whole lives. But hey, whatever.